Welcome to Checks and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And this week we are joined by two very special guests. We have the head of customer complaints from Lighthouse, Cooper Blair, his first time on the podcast. We also have Kat, head of customer strategy at Kernel Wealth, has an amazing podcast as well. It's no secret, just had 100K downloads. Very good. And this week we are going to talk about babies and how to avoid bankruptcy with them.
Okay, so we've got a very special guest today. It ain't Kat, it's Cooper. So Cooper is due for his debut. So we're going to try and do this thing with Cooper here. I acknowledge this will most likely turn to custard, so I'll just walk off and then come back if it doesn't work. But Kat, I joke, thank you very much for joining us today for a very special episode.
Really excited for this one.
Yeah, so obviously it's a pretty relevant point at the moment, and not just for me, but for you as well, Kat.
Yep, recently back from mat leave, 9 months old, pretty crazy time.
Yeah, so how's the first 9 months with Lily been?
Really good, really good. A big learning curve, which we're obviously going to talk about today because, you know, you kind of go into these things thinking you know what's going to happen, and I can guarantee you anything but will go to plan.
Is this like a prep session for me at some point?
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
Take notes, mate.
Yeah. And then we're going to call this out, Mike. Like, I mean, you're here today, you bring in the energy, you may talk a little bit about mortgages,
I'll
but
chip in.
Yeah. So we've got tips because, I mean, safe to say, I had no bloody idea what was going on. And safe to say, I still have no idea what's going on. You got any idea what's going on, Coops? Also, if you're listening to the audio-only version, you're really missing out on some cuteness today. So make sure to have a look at the YouTube channel.
I do look good.
So, Kat, we're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump straight into your tips, but we'll maybe stop a little bit early. When you realized you were going to have a baby, can you tell us a little bit about like how much planning went in beforehand and the
process to get there.
process that you went through?
Definitely. So I'm a bit of a natural planner at heart. My husband will give me a bit of stick for this, but I was probably planning to have a baby from a financial aspect way earlier than most people would. The idea of having only 9 months to save for what potentially could be up to 12 months off work is a little bit terrifying. So we were making sure that we were doing all the smart things like, you know, increasing our emergency funds, actually stockpiling a bit of cash so that I could have time off work. At the time that we fell pregnant, my husband wasn't back at his job post-COVID. So actually midway through our pregnancy, our plan flipped because the original plan was that he would be primary carer whilst I was at work. And then he started back at work about 4 months before Lily was born. So that worked out really well. But we kind of, I guess, just went into it with the worst case scenario of you don't know how much kids are going to cost. You know, you have to have time off. There could be health costs and other things that we'll get into. So start saving as early as possible.
Yeah, that's pretty much we talk about getting your money to work with long-term goals.
Yeah.
This is very much a short-term survival piece, and you got to have cash in the bank to make sure you can keep everything rolling and you can enjoy the time, right? That you're not thinking about money too much.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, on the parental leave front, like if your employer doesn't have parental leave, still engage in the conversation with them. Like one of the good things about where I work at Kernel is prior to me falling pregnant, we hadn't had anyone go on parental leave. We didn't have a parental leave policy, but the management team and the board were super open to discussing that. Yeah. So we do now offer paid parental leave benefits. You know, it's very much for smaller and medium businesses. Talk to people. People are reasonable. If you're a good employee, they'll want to keep you. So, you know, have the conversation.
Definitely. I mean, that goes with so many things with good staff is you just find a way to make it work and keep them happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you think in general, and Coops, feel free to jump in if you've got any thoughts on the subject, what do you think Kiwis are like in general in terms of, do you reckon they just have a baby and go, we'll work it out?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, I'd say that's the majority. Yeah. And to be fair, that probably works okay because I think in the similar vein to, you know, when interest rates are rising and people have a mortgage, you just make it work, right? Yeah. Like you just hustle to, you know, downsize your expenses or whatever that may be. But I guess on the tips front, you know, one of my top tips would be with that whole budget planning piece in advance, I probably underestimated how much I would spend on a discretionary basis when on parental leave because, you know, you make the assumptions around we're not going to go out for dinner as much. I for a time wasn't doing any exercise. Like, you put gym memberships on pause. So did my husband, like all of that kind of stuff. But on the flip side, when you have a little one and your only sanity is to like get out of the house, and maybe, they're really good at sleeping in the pram, and FYI, you don't want to be walking around the streets doing nothing for hours on end. You go and buy a coffee, you buy, a takeaway lunch, you do those discretionary things. And I think it's worthwhile factoring that in early rather than feeling like, you're trying to keep a child alive for one, you're trying to keep yourself sane. You don't want to deprive yourself of too much sanity.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that. If I get to choose between spending some more money and keeping Hannah and Cooper same when I get home at night.
Absolutely.
Versus, sorry, the budget's too tight or we don't have enough money set aside.
Not leave the house.
Yeah. I know which one I would pick.
Yeah.
So that's tip number 1. What's tip number 2, Kat?
I think it would be knowing what is important to spend money on. So, you're not going to know what your baby's like until they're here. And it's really easy to get sucked into the trap of thinking that you need all of the things. But one of the things that I guess we're really lucky with some friends that had had babies before us. We're lucky to learn from them was they had bought stuff for their kid that their child just really didn't like.
Yeah.
And so they were like, don't spend the money on that now. Borrow it from people if you can. If it works for you, feel free to go buy your own. Maybe it's a bouncer, maybe it's a different type of pram, whatever it might be to make your life easier. But don't go out at the start and buy all the things.
Yeah.
You really only need a few things like you need your cot, you need your car seat, and you probably need a pram. And outside of that, you need clothes.
Yeah.
There's not that much more to it.
Yeah.
And it's, add into that once you know what you're actually going to need in your family environment.
One thing I've appreciated as I've learned more, because, your boy likes business, Edwards & Co. as a business model, just like crushing it.
Yeah.
Like I've never looked at a pram in my life, and now I look at them and they own the market.
Shout out to Ben Whitley.
Yeah.
Very, very impressive. But I was talking to Hannah about like some tips she'd have as well, and one of the things was one is around like influencers and retail being like, you definitely need this thing, it'll make your life so much easier.
Yep.
And a lot of the time it's just crap.
Yeah.
And the second aspect as well is like you should get lots of bottles. And it's like, well, what if that baby doesn't like that type of bottle? Or, look how many books. Have we read all these books? I didn't know most of these books existed before today.
Yeah. We had the same thing with dummies. Like dummies is a bit of a controversial one as to whether or not people use them, but there's like 17 different types of dummies, right? And we went through probably 6 brands before Lily decided that she actually liked them.
Yeah.
And so when a colleague recently had a baby, I was like, I don't know what you guys feel about dummies, but here are all our rejects.
Yeah.
Like, don't go and buy them. They're all pink and they had a boy. But I was like, figure out if he even wants a dummy. No, exactly. Before you start doing those things, because even though I think where you get sucked in is those items might only be like $20 a pop, but it's over the course of, 6 months, 12 months that all of those little things really add up.
Yep. No, anything to add on this one, Mike?
Yeah.
Mike, I might take a slight detour from Kat's list, and I am very keen to hear in terms of everyone wants a mortgage.
Yes.
And
everyone to meet that goal of potentially buying a house before they have a family. And then on that planning piece, it's like, well, how much do you have to plan post the family thing for the mortgage and the house?
And the super dangerous thing at the moment, right, is it's not just I'm looking to get a mortgage before we go on parental leave. It's you also add in like my rates have gone from 3% to 6%.
Yep.
So what are you seeing in that space as I take Cooper off camera?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. So unfortunately for first home buyers, a lot of them when they buy the house are a 2-person household.
Yeah.
It's a family of 2, and then they turn into a family of 3, and now their rates are exponentially going up. And those are the households that don't have a lot of cash flow that they can sort of redistribute, right? So doing a bit of work in that space with people, but generally speaking, when people are talking to us about getting a mortgage when they have a family or someone is pregnant or on mat leave or something like that, it can be quite prohibitive in terms of borrowing because the banks not too keen on being like, yep, you'll go back to work in 6 months, guaranteed, because no one ever goes back to work in 6 months.
Yeah.
So that can be quite tricky. But the other thing is we really ask the customers to think about the costs and think about exactly what are the repayments. Because I know everyone wants the house, it's going to complete the family, household sort of thing. But you've just got to be really careful that you are not overextending yourself.
Yeah.
The daycare costs,
Oh, the daycare costs.
Honestly, you've probably got a couple of months right before one of the couple returns to work and before the daycare costs kick in, where you can apply for a mortgage. Because then I can make some assumptions about it, and family are going to help out, and it's not going to be so expensive. And you're returning to work in a couple of months, so we can probably do it then. But well, yeah, she's tricky.
There's no right or wrong. I mean, the problem is, right, like people want to get ahead. You don't want having kids to slow you down too much in terms of your financial goals. The market's down at the moment. It's a great time to get in, but do you think it's just like a bad time to buy a house if you've got those things going on? You don't want to tell people to slow down.
It's just case by case, man. Like some people have the cash flow to afford it. For some people, it works out. And like you sort of said before, you just adjust things to make it work to a degree.
Yeah. It's easier to do that though when there's the two of you, right? I guess the complicated factor is when you have someone else in that equation, you can't stop buying them food. They're not going out for dinner. You might be. There's a bit more fat in the budget, but yeah, it is tricky.
Yeah. It's also where the parental leave policy at your work makes a huge difference. Your boy's over corporate life. I've served my time. I'm a free man. But large corporates look after people having kids very, very well. I think you're talking about, was it in Australia as well? There's for the other person as well. You can get some really good time off
benefits.
work. Yeah.
Good corporates. And, I've had friends that have been really tactical about this. They've been looking at moving from, the Air New Zealands of the world, and they've gone to one of the big 4 banks because the reality is they want to continue growing their family and they're just realistic about the fact that they need paid leave.
Yeah. And Plunkett says a baby costs as much as $16,000 a year, right? So you chuck that into your budget and it's quite a bit.
It is.
What's your next tip, Kat?
Great point. I think it would just be making sure that you've got some money set aside for you, because I think one of the things that people get really hyper-focused on, I know we did this when you're having a baby and you're super excited, is everything for the baby. But the reality is like the parents go through a lot of change as well, and particularly, the mum, because she's the birthing partner. There can be things after birth that you just need to do for your own physical and mental health. That stuff costs money. There's not a lot funded by ACC for that. So just being realistic about, little things like maybe you need to go to the physio or get some massages or go see a pelvic floor physio or, just have a sanity break. That stuff costs money, and I think it's worthwhile factoring that in, putting a bit aside for you.
Yeah, there's so many of those things you just want to think about because in your life at the moment you're not paying for them. Another one Hannah was talking to me about is, so Cooper came when she was 37 weeks pregnant, right? And you hear some people go, I'm going to work up to 40 weeks, or even they have to stop working at 28 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So it's not 6 months off, it becomes 9 months off. Yeah. So there's all those different variables. And the solution is actually really simple, is cash in the bank is key. If you do not have enough cash set aside, this is going to be a pretty painful journey.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool.
Definitely.
Next tip, Kat?
Awesome. So I think, I kind of touched on it before, but having important conversations around money with your partner, I think this is super relevant to both what are we doing with our house? What are we doing with our mortgage? But also just what are we comfortable spending money on? Your life is stressful enough once the baby arrives. So James, I'm sure you can test this. You're tired, whether they sleep well or not, you're busy. One of the partners is probably working in some capacity. There's a lot going on. You do not want to be on a different page to your partner about money. And so having those hard conversations sooner, really key.
Yeah. And they're not, with a lot of money conversations, people aren't on the same page.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Hannah, for example, the other day goes to me, I've decided I'm not returning to work. And I was like, oh yeah. She's like, yep, I enjoy being at home too much. And I was like, okay, well, let me just sell the house and we can pitch a tent and all live happily ever together down at the local park. And Harry the pug will be happy because it'll always be at his local park. Even conversations around how much time you will take off, all that discretion.
To work,
really
tough one.
The discretionary spending. We're going to have to pull back on that. What's really important to us. It's all conversations with money, and being a financial advisor is just as much as I'm pretty much a marriage counselor as much as I talk about money.
I believe that.
Yeah, you've got to have those conversations.
Yeah, particularly because I think having seen people go through this, there is the dynamic that often the person that is at home, like the non-working spouse, in this instance, is the person spending money because they're the person that actually goes to the supermarket. They're the person that, probably fills the car up, does all of those things.
Yep.
And it's a real psychological, mind problem of you're not at that point in time contributing financially to the household, but you feel like you're the one that's kind of being the drain on the finances. And you can have a lot of guilt even if you've had a really solid conversation around that. So just those little things are important to be aware of.
Yep. I've got a couple of quick bonus tips before we wrap up that Hannah's given me some very good notes on because she was quite excited about this episode. One is if you've got some spare money beforehand, consider chucking some money on extra bills now.
Yep.
The other piece is around wills. So you're probably pretty casual about whether you die and what happens to your assets. When you have a child involved and then you got to think about who's responsible for that child if something happened to both of you.
Insurance.
That was the next part. Is life insurance, income protection. If you do not have those things now, before it was like, look, it's up to you. You got to deal with the consequences. Now it's just like negligent, not sorting it out. So please make sure to get those things done. So Kat, would you recommend having...
I would. I think it's definitely a go in eyes wide open experience. It is awesome, but I will say that the more financially prepared you can be, the easier it's going to be in that instance. You've got enough challenges being thrown at you when you're a new parent. You don't want this one.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So make sure to check out Kat and Christine's podcast, It's No Secret, on all of the platforms. Congratulations on 100,000 downloads. That is a very cool stat to hit. If you're thinking about how can you be regularly investing, Kernel's a great platform to get started and has a lot of really cool benefits and a really unique proposition in the market. And hey, while you're looking at things, on the 18th of May, we are also running, most likely in our office, with both Kernel and Haig Lyon, a law firm in Auckland, a how to invest for your family. So if you'd like to come in person, have, I don't know, Mike, there might be a drink, there might be some...
Might be one or two.
Yeah, there might be some cheese and bickies. Please check out Ravi. We'll put some links somewhere or send some instructions where you can go. Kat, thank you very much for joining us.
No worries.
We will have to get you back soon.
Loved it.
Please make sure to subscribe, give us a review, and we will catch you next time.
Cheers.